Welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, broadcasting from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Empire and on the fringes with the New Republic. Join your hosts Garrett K. Jones, Brian Karasik, and John Mark Tolley as they discuss the various facets of the saga's lore and characters, review the films, and discuss every tidbit of news coming out of Lucasfilm. Remember, this isn't just your Star Wars, this isn't just my Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. This is the way.
Hello, this is indeed the way. Welcome once again to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. And my name is Mark Tolley, or John Mark Tolley, whatever you want to call me. Joining me, as always, by my co-host, Garrett K. Jones. Garrett, how are you today?
I am pretty peachy. I'm doing. Ironically, I just realized I say that as I'm wearing a Georgia Aquarium shirt. But I specifically wore it because we're talking about a character today, and it's got Luke, I am your otter on there in kind of a South Park style. So I'm peachy. Nice. How are you doing?
Good. I am doing pretty good. I actually have been doing some Star Wars reading. Recently got my library card back. Nice. But downloaded Hoopla, which is a online library, has connections to all the libraries, and I downloaded a couple of ebooks and some comics and audiobook, and currently listening to the Star Wars Philosophy Strikes Back. It is a collection of Star Wars and philosophy, short, not stories, but essays on Star Wars and philosophy from various writers and philosophical concepts. And one was looking at the different Plato and Nietzsche from both the view of both the Jedi and the Sith, and Jedi and Stoicism.
That's cool.
It's about an 11-hour read, so driving a bus, it gives a lot of time. But read one of the Darth Vader comics, and currently going through a Dr. Aphra comic, and also the Ahsoka novel. So a lot of reading.
That's
trying to catch up. I haven't been reading for a while, so
yeah, I'm actually
don't know if I'll be able to get through all of it.
I just got back into an audiobook this morning, and I probably could have been listening to it on the way home from work today, but it's one of the books in the Firefly series.
Okay.
So this one's called Aim to Misbehave, and it's cool because this one explores a little bit of Shepard Book's background and his history. Like the prologue actually kicks off when he was a young man, like in his late teens, early 20s, and it was really cool because little snippets throughout the series give you a little bit of his backstory of what he used to do and how he used to be before becoming a shepherd. And it's really kind of neat because he's got probably one of the more mysterious pasts of any of the primary characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really digging it. And the audiobook narrator is fantastic because the way his cadence works, like when he does the dialogue for Mal Reynolds, like it's spot on. It sounds almost exactly like Nathan Fillion. So I really dig that.
Yeah. That's the one thing I say that I haven't liked about listening to the audiobook version of the Star Wars and Philosophy is I get the sense that the reader that they're using is AI. Because it's very just kind of one monotone sound the entire way. And there's a little bit of inflection, but I'm just kind of like, oh, it's like, I like content, and some of the topics that they talk about is really interesting, especially when they're comparing the idea of freedom with the Sith compared to the idea of freedom for a Jedi, and kind of that contrast of it was really interesting, but it's hard getting past the who or whatever they have to read. Actually reading it.
One of the audiobooks I downloaded recently back during the summer is by a YouTuber that I follow named Dave Cullen. He's from Ireland, and he has a couple of books out, and one of them is talking about advances in technology and what we're seeing now versus what was projected, even 20 years ago, and how things have changed so quickly. And while some of it is incredibly convenient, that sometimes not sometimes, but oftentimes there's a trade-off for that convenience. And the irony is like he had an AI program do the audiobook narration for him. And it's only like a 2-hour long audiobook. And just because he wasn't able to do it himself, he just didn't have the time. And he didn't want to hire somebody. So this was a way to go about doing it. And you can tell it's obviously not a human voice, but it gets compounded when some of the cadence sounds very robotic and monotone, as you're mentioning. But then the other thing is like pronunciations of certain words. It doesn't. The pronunciation is very off. It goes grammatic and instead of the actual pronunciation. And I'm like, no, that's not right.
Well, it's the same thing. Like I'll hear something and they'll be talking about, like, I live near University of Illinois, whose their team name is the Fighting Illini. Well, if you get an AI voice, you'll hear Illini or Illini. It's like, no, it's
because it doesn't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, because the spelling is Illini.
So it does it phonetically.
Yeah. But anyway, we're going to talk about grammar or other things. As exciting as that might sound, just an entire podcast on grammar.
Hey, I do a video podcast on writing all the time, so I'm okay with it.
This is true.
But
grammar and philosophy here on the next episode of War of the Stars.
Yes. Philosophy. Yeah. No, this week we're jumping into another Character Crave episode, and we are asking the question, do you see what Saw sees?
Do you see what Saw?
Because we're talking about Saw Gerrera.
Why don't I just have that? Why don't I just read that with the Little Drummer Boy?
Do you see what I
see? Do you see what Saw sees?
A star, Death Star, shining in the night. Oh crap! It's gonna shoot us. Like I said, I'm full of puns tonight, man. My best friend would be very proud of me.
I had the perfect opportunity for the classic dad joke, and I did not take it. Someone at my work said. Someone at my work said the classic line of "I am tired," and I just did not say the classic dad joke of "I'm tired, I'm dad."
Yo, dude, yeah, my son did that to me. We're at the zoo, and he's like, and we're at the zoo on Friday for his third grade field trip, and we're walking out to the cafeteria to go grab some food. And he comes up and he stands in front of me, and with his arms out, like this, and it's his sign of pick me up and put me on your shoulders. Now my son's gonna be almost 9, like he's like 4.5 feet tall. I'm getting to the point where I cannot put him on my shoulders properly, and no kidding, like this kid, like he does that, and I'm like, why should I do that? He's like, I'm tired, and I'm like, hi, tired. I'm Dad. Nice to meet you. And he's like, he slapped my hand away, and he's like, I'm like, good boy. You know how to make the letter T. Dude, that joke did not go over well with an autistic kid.
Oh, man. I'll have to tell you more about my, when we get off the air, about my day and taking a bunch of preschoolers who decided to start the 6-7 chant in the bus.
Oh, God.
If you know what that's all about.
I know what it's all about. I see that
we had there was one of my daughter's little friends for Halloween dressed up as 6-7. Literally a 6 and a 7 that was like lit up, and I'm just like, no.
And the only people who really get that understanding, that reference, are people from Philadelphia who understand the rap culture over there.
Yeah.
Because that's where it stemmed from.
Yeah. Anyway, before my brain explodes from thinking
Brain
about
rot,
this.
man. That's what it is. It's brain rot.
Saw Gerrera.
Saw Gerrera. So we're talking about Saw Gerrera. We're going over some of his history, some of the things that make him interesting, and I mean, obviously he's a battered veteran. I like this description.
Yeah.
He's from Onderon. He was a resistance fighter during the Clone Wars as a teenager, and he became a resistance fighter in his adult years against the Empire. Like, this guy there's not been a war in this guy's lifetime that he did not try to join and on one side or the other. And so a little bit of history. He was let's see, it doesn't say when exactly he was born, but he died 1 BBY on the planet Jeddah when it was demolished by the Death Star, which is probably one of the coolest sequences I've ever seen in a Star Wars movie.
Oh, that was very cool.
Yeah,
that whole.
But we're talking about a character who is he's got some history within the saga. So
definitely, yeah. A very
first questions first. What are your initial thoughts of the character overall? Like just knowing what you know about him from the Clone Wars through the Rebellion era. What are your thoughts, Mark?
I mean, definitely a character with. I think the word baggage puts it lightly. You know, this is someone with a lot carrying a lot of pain and a lot of bitterness. And I think we kind of touched on it last week too. He's a character that for him, not only do the ends justify the means, the means are the ends. You know, he's willing to do whatever it takes, and not even to necessarily make a better galaxy for the world, but just to get some measure of revenge, just to get some measure of, you know, he's the type of person that it seems to me like doesn't care one way or the other. He doesn't care if the New Republic wins as long as the Empire loses.
Yeah.
Like he's you know, it's all about causing as much pain to those who hurt him and his family as it is anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, he is definitely I agree with you. He's got a ton of baggage. And part of the issue with him is that I mean, so growing up on Onderon, his parents died when he was young. It was just him and his sister Stila, and within 2 years after the start of the secession from the Republic, like Onderon didn't want to have anything to do with the Clone Wars. They wanted to stay as far out of it as possible. They didn't take any sides. But then you have like the separatist army showing up, doing what they do. I mean, the Onderon had a puppet leader at the time, and that kind of brought in a lot of other issues. And so with the separatists coming in, obviously that became a clear battleground area for the Clone Wars, because I mean there's several episodes that deal specifically with that campaign.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about Saw is that it's not just the baggage. Like this guy, like he was, I mean, like he wasn't huffing pain. He was huffing, Rhydonium, which is, a fuel source, and it's used for all sorts of equipment and stuff like that. And like I love the description here on Wikipedia. Like it talks about how like he was just there with his fellow workers, and there's a leak, and they all began to itch, and they, and even before the smell hit them, and he like apparently he got high off the stuff, And when everybody else goes into the mines, with some kind of breathing apparatus on, like he's just walking in there completely barefaced, just inhaling as much rhydonium as he possibly could. And I'm thinking that's a lot of what impacted, like between all the survivor's guilt, because obviously his sister died during the Clone Wars, and the trauma that he experienced because of the Clone Wars, mixing with that gas. I'm assuming it created an issue for him as an adult later on.
Yeah. Well, he's also someone that, he could care less whether he lived or died, but he transferred over to how he treated other people. Not only could he not care whether he lived or died, he didn't care if anyone else under him lived or died either.
Yeah. He was definitely not someone who cared. Like, he cared about his men so long as they were useful. Once they've served their purpose, he was okay if they died. And that is, like, that's not the sign of a good leader.
No, he was
not an effective leader, just not a good leader.
Yeah, he was effective in the same way that maybe a few Russian generals might have been effective, where we'll win the war, but it will cost us.
It cost us a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what's interesting though, you look at the casting for the character, like the way, I mean, obviously with a voice cast, it's a little bit different than a physical live action cast. But looking at, there's a lot, he's got a lot of history throughout the Clone Wars. Voiced Saw Gerrera in the Clone Wars. So Andrew Kishino did the voiceover work for Saw in the Clone Wars series, and Kishino is, let me see what else he's been in. Like, he played an Imperial technician and Saw Gerrera in the Bad Batch. He's played a couple different characters in Star Wars Visions. He's done a lot of voiceover work, and so he's I think he did a great job playing this character. But I think the fact that we got Forrest Whitaker playing the character as an older man, I thought was really ingenious casting, because Forrest Whitaker is one of those actors who can go from playing a really soft-spoken, very genteel person like he did in a movie like Phenomenon opposite John Travolta, or he can go on to play someone incredibly brutal, like I think he played Gaddafi in Last King of Scotland.
Yeah.
No, Idi Amin. I'm sorry, not Gaddafi. Idi Amin. Yeah, and I'm just like, he has such a great repertoire of performances across the board, and I liked him in the role.
So I looked up. We were just talking about AI, about some of the things on Saw Gerrera about what PTSD. And this is what it says. It says trauma and radicalization. Leaving several, said he fought in multiple wars and saw several countless atrocity, leading to severe PTSD-like symptoms. He had a high distrust of others, even allies, because of betrayal. He was paranoid and obsessive. He suspects everyone of betrayal, including members of the Rebel Alliance. He's manic and erratic, and he is it calls him a Unitarian. I cannot speak today. Utilitarianism, extremism. He uses torture and believes any means justify the ends.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, like, there's kind of a Che Guevara vibe to the way he works. Because I mean,
Which
if
is
you look
ironic.
well, it's actually deliberate because I was looking here at the concept and creation of the character. It says Saw Gerrera's name is a mnemonic riff on the name of Argentinian revolutionary Che Guevara, and Gerrera is also a heterograph of the Spanish word guerrera, meaning female warrior, which also described Saw's sister Stila.
Yeah,
there's a lot of semblances there.
I know.
But yeah, he's militant. He's an extremist. Like,
now, he is not, because I asked this question. He is not a psychopath.
No,
because he is capable of empathy. Especially when
he
towards,
knows the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah, and he's very empathetic. He does care for people. Like, you can tell he cares for Jen.
Mm-hmm.
So he does, because I think maybe he saw his sister, and that's why. It's not. I don't think it's specifically stated, obviously, but knowing Saul's past, he probably saw Jen and was like, "Oh, this is I can." Yeah, I mean, like you said, he knew right from wrong. He knew, but again, for him, the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
He definitely.
What's interesting is that if you go through, like, Gerrera shows up in Jedi Fallen Order, and he's one of the notable characters that shows up, because I mean there are other characters who do from the franchise, namely Vader being one of them. But again, he was voiced by Forrest Whitaker, and and the game takes place 5 years after the Clone Wars and the events of the Bad Batch. And he's actually on Kashyyyk the first time around with his partisans, and they're trying to liberate the Wookiees. And like he's actually looking for Tarful, the Wookiee chieftain, and so you end up helping him to some extent, and eventually, you're successful, and then the next time that you go to Kashyyyk, Gerrera's left the planet and he's doing something else.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, he goes in, he does what he needs to do, he leaves, done.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think Saw is probably one of the more interesting and complex characters that we've seen come out of Star Wars in a while, just because of what he's dealt with. And like, I mean, he shows up in one movie, 3 different animated series, a live action show, and a video game. That's a lot for a single character to show up in who is not a primary character.
Yeah, especially a minor character.
Yeah, and it's like, with everything that he goes through, there's a really interesting. I think there's an analysis for the psychology of the character, just because he's dealing with, because you were talking about how he is distrusting, he's dissociative, he's constantly paranoid, and I think a lot of that is brought about by the fact that he has been huffing Rhydonium for years, decades.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, because if in Rogue One, when we're introduced to him, he's got that tank that he's breathing out of. And I thought, okay, he's got, with all the armor and the tech that's in there, he's probably on some kind of he's walking around in some kind of wearable, iron lung or something. Yeah. No, what he's huffing from that gas mask is Rhydonium.
Yeah,
it's raw Rhydonium fumes, and I'm because they kind of make that known when he shows up again in Andor season 2, and he exposes one of his own guys to the fumes, and I'm just like, holy crap, this guy is coked out.
Yeah. It's also interesting to, especially when take sometimes to take characters like this and compare and contrast them to someone else. In this case, I think a good compare and contrast would be Mon Mothma, and almost a complete. just the way they're like they're both technically on the same side, but they could not be any more different from how they approach the rebellion, how they go about it, and how they're like their whole philosophy of what they're almost what they're fighting for is completely different. Even though they're on the same side. I mean, I don't know if there's another person that you would think would be a better contrast to Saw and Mon Mothma.
I like the way,
as far as like,
I would say that Saw Gerrera, I mean, I think he mirrors Mothma a lot. But I think he also mirrors Luthen Rail. He also mirrors Andor. In that, like, Andor is the fighter. He's always itching for a fight. And then he encounters Saw Gerrera, and he sees just like he becomes a little bit more tactful in the way he handles things.
Yeah, because he sees. I think he also sees that, like, this is the way Luthen was, and kind of how Luthen was. Like, he's like, this is where I'm headed. If I follow the way Luthen is doing things, this is where I'm headed. Which is when he kind of turned and started, doing more, the quote unquote legitimate alliance with Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, and following, going to
Bail Organa and Mon Mothma are idealists. I mean, that's the whole thing, is that they are looking at it from a philosophical idealist lens, whereas someone like Saw Gerrera, he's thinking about everything in a practical term. Like, he is all about tearing down the old and rebuilding something new, but he knows he's not going to see it.
I do think that Mon Mothma was, I think, they were idealists, but they're also understood something that I don't know if Saw did, was that once the Empire's gone, there has to be something else to replace it. And Mon Mothma, I mean, not Mon Mothma, but Saw didn't really think that far ahead. I think Mon Mothma, especially Saw, had the idea of like, okay, if we defeat the Empire, what happens next? We need a structure in place that once this is done, once this is gone, that's something else, because if not, then something else will just replace it that could be worse. Whereas Saw was like, like we said, he didn't care. He just didn't want the Empire to win. He didn't care who else won as long as it wasn't the Empire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Because I mean, like, the idea that Saw has behind everything he does, like, he commits all the war crimes, man. Like, he's willing to torture people. Like, I mean, we see that in Rogue One, where he's willing to torture Bodhi for information about the Empire, thinking he's just a spy, and he's not. He's a turncoat. He's willing to do the same thing to Andor and to Chirrut and Baze, and even, like, I bet, like, if he hadn't recognized Jen, he probably would have done the same thing to her.
Oh yeah.
And then, but he also does other things, like he uses physical torture, not psychological. He uses physical torture. Like, we see how brutal he can be with like, during the Clone Wars. We saw how he was in Bad Batch and Rebels, where he is willing to hurt other people just to make sure that the rebellion is able to live. Not even caring whether or not that damages the mission of the rebellion.
So, yeah, definitely a deeply flawed, but in many ways, human character.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't take much for someone to get radicalized like that.
Well, I mean, no, it doesn't, because I mean, but to be fair, the issue that we have with Saw is that it wasn't an ideology or philosophy or even like a particular political leaning that radicalized him. What it was his own, like he kind of radicalized himself. Like he was this very, very vengeful, very, he had the chip on his shoulder from the very beginning. Like when we're first introduced to him on Onderon, like you can like there's a bit of dialogue where he is talking with, where is it? Right here, where it's like when Obi-Wan and Anakin and Ahsoka are training the Onderons to defend themselves against if I could think, to defend themselves against the Separatists. And he's like, oh, and then we get to take out some clankers. And Obi-Wan's like, yes, eventually. And like there's this impulsivity to him. He couldn't wait to get into the battle. He couldn't wait to kill something. He couldn't wait to destroy something. And like my take on this is that if Saw hadn't gone into rebelling against the Separatists, if he hadn't gone into rebelling against the Empire, my guess is that he would have been that guy who eventually would have gotten himself thrown in prison.
Yeah.
And like just any other person who lands themselves in prison, none of it would have been his fault. Like he wouldn't take any accountability for anything he says or does. Because you see that in the way he behaves in Rebels. You see that in the way he behaves later on with Jyn Erso. Like everything is justifiable. Because as you said, the ends justify the means.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what else do we got?
So my question is, do you think Saw Gerrera was successful in the campaigns that he participated in?
That depends on how you define successful. Like short term, yes, but I don't think that his campaigns were ones that really could have brought about a lasting success. Like short term, yes, they caused disruption, they caused chaos for the Empire, they did things like that, but because he didn't have a long-term goal, there could be no real long-term success.
Yeah.
Like it could only go so far until eventually, it would have, it would have caught up to him, and what happened to him would have happened to him eventually, whether it was a Death Star or something else. It's
So I'm looking here. I actually did a Google search of was Saw Gerrera successful in his rebellions, and it gives me two sections: successes and failures and outcomes. And what's interesting is the failures and outcomes are twice the successes. Like for under successes, he was successful in the Onderon liberation. He and his sister were instrumental. They in leading the resistance, but it came at the cost of his sister being killed. And they were able to reinstate the rightful king. But his tactical operations, like he was successful on Kashyyyk in stealing Imperial equipment and destroying the Imperial relay station and successfully rescuing Carful from captivity. Those are his two major successes. Everything after that is considered failures and outcomes. Like, he was alienated from the Rebel Alliance because of his extreme, uncompromising tactics, which resulted in civilian casualties. Again, he didn't care what happened. He didn't care about the consequences so long as the ends justified the means. They eventually disavowed him. He engaged in basically a war of attrition with the Empire, which resulted in a lot of people on his team getting killed. His mission on Geonosis cost dozens, if not scores, of lives, and the Wookiees that he freed on Kashyyyk sustained additional casualties because he abandoned them. Like, he just up and left. Then there was his death on Jeddah. Like, he spent all that time on Jeddah and he accomplished nothing. The holy city was still ransacked and overrun by the Imperials. They had control of the planet. He had done nothing to change anything with his tactics. And then ultimately, like you said, there was no long-term goal achievement. Like, that was it, just it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like,
I know I talked about. Oh.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, no.
You first.
We were talking about, the juxtaposition of Saul and Mon Mothma. I think another one is because they're both sort of these I can't pronounce the word. Utilitarian extremist is Tarkin. They're both people for whom the ends justify the means.
Yeah, that's true.
But flip sides of the coin. One, of course, is an Imperial. The other ones where, for Tarkin, it was definitely the same thing. It was, ends justify the means, and
I think what it comes down to, though, is for Tarkin, Tarkin had better optics. Yeah. Because they had control of the media machine. They could spin it however they wanted, and Tarkin was more or less untouchable in that regard. Meanwhile, you've got Saw doing whatever he wants, and it's creating an alienation and a disparity between him and others who would otherwise be on his side. Like, they didn't trust him. He was willing to sacrifice his own people, whatever it took to get the job done. And that's a terrible motivator. Like, if people are willing to give themselves to the ideal and are willing to make that sacrifice voluntarily, that's one thing. It's another when you don't tactically find any advantage. It's when you don't really plan things out. You don't have a long-term goal, and you end up getting people killed under your watch. Like, a good leader doesn't do that. A good leader knows the difference between knows the cost, understands that cost. They know the difference between a life sacrificed and a life wasted. Yeah. And he didn't know that difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Tarkin did, but he just didn't care.
No. Well, because Tarkin had the resources to throw at it.
Exactly.
They had how many millions of soldiers that they could just disposably throw at any military engagement. Look at how many fighter pilots they lost on the Death Star.
To quote, I believe it was Abraham Lincoln when talking about his generals, he understood the arithmetic that it's going to take these many lives to throw at to defeat this, and he was willing to throw. Tarkin was willing to throw as many men as it took to do what it needed to be done.
And Saw Gerrera,
Saw Gerrera was the same way. He was willing to throw.
He just didn't have the resources.
He just didn't have the resources.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it brings me back to what Saw says to Jyn Erso right before they part ways. He says, "Save the rebellion, save the dream." And I think what really stands out for me on that is the fact that for him, the rebellion was a dream. There was no plan. There was there's no steps to take to execute. Everything was off the cuff. Everything was, okay, today we're going to do this, and hopefully it sticks. It's just like throwing mud at the wall, hoping something will stay there, knowing full well that 9 times out of 10 the mud's just going to slop down onto the floor and not do anything. He had no plan for anything, and like you said, and like it was listed on Google, no long-term strategy.
Yeah.
So that's about what I've got, and I didn't do enough research on Saw Gerrera for this week.
Yeah. Well, before we go into our normal spiel of all the places that we can be found at, stuff like that, this show comes out on a Wednesday, which will be the day after, here in America, Veterans Day. Around the world, it is also known as Remembrance Day, or other terms. It's Remembrance Day, and anyway, Armistice Day. That was the other word.
Yes, Armistice.
Yeah, Armistice Day.
I was just Googling
here in America, we use it a time to remember those who have fought or served our country. And wherever you are in the world out there, if you are active military or have served in the military, we here at War of the Stars thank you for your service. I know I have a nephew and niece who are both veterans. My dad was a veteran. My mom's, both my grandparents. Well, my grandparent, my wife's grandparents, both fought in World War II. Several family members. So again, thank you for your service if you are a veteran. And for those who fought in the Great War, obviously nobody's alive anymore, but thank you.
I would be amazed if there was someone still alive.
I know. But thank you again to all those who have served, and happy Veterans Day, happy Armistice Day, happy Remembrance Day, and yeah, just thank you.
Absolutely.
Garrett, why don't you start us off and tell the family where they can find you?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing. I talk about my show The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. I'm also on another show for Feast of Fandoms called Snackame, where we eat snacks and talk anime. And we are actually coming up on our 1-year anniversary this month on the 22nd. Normally our episodes drop on Fridays, but a week from this coming Saturday is going to be our anniversary. So we're doing our special episode then. And we're just going to be kind of talking about the pros and cons of some of the shows that we have watched over the last year, as well as talking about the first half of the second season of Ranma 1/2 on Netflix. And then, of course, I'm working on a variety of writing projects, including I'm almost to the end of the first round of edits on my newest book, which is called The Preludes of War. It's the 6th title in my Archives of a Scene Korean fantasy series. So I'm having fun with that.
Nice. All right. As for us right here at War of the Stars, if you want to get a hold of us, warofthestars1@gmail.com. That is our email. All other socials, that is Blue Sky, Instagram, X, and YouTube, it is at War of the Stars 77. If you want to support the show, go to ko-fi.com/War of the Stars. That is ko-fi.com/War of the Stars. Or go to spreadshirt.com/shop/War of the Stars. Links will be in the description as always. Also, we are, as Garrett mentioned, a proud member of Feast of Fandoms. Not just War of the Stars, not just Nakame, but a bunch of other shows. You can see it going right down there if you're watching on YouTube. Pretty much, again, every fandom, there is a show for it out there. Hence, a Feast of Fandoms. For this week. Next week, we will be talking about walkers and not or anything like that. It is also not, as Garrett mentioned, Texas Rangers. It is Star Wars.
I think Mark got frozen on the wastes of Hoth. So I'm just going to jump in here and kind of finish this up, kind of wrap it up. We're talking about walkers next week. So that's going to be our tech talk for the month of November. And as always, this is not just our Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. Well, it is our Star Wars. I'm completely botching Mark's line. That's okay. He's frozen. So, Carbonite's working with him. But may the Force be with you guys, and we'll see you in the ether.